let's learn how to do a half lap joint. That's what this is here. This is the end result that we're going for. I'm not going to show you the whole process because half of this process you already know how to do. And that includes cutting through the board halfway through. This is 3/4 inch thick board. We did a cut halfway through the board, so you know you can do the math and figure out that kind of stuff, how to do that. One thing we had to do was, it depends on the project that you're doing, but I had to determine, well, how far in should that cut be in terms of this distance here. You have to do some thinking regarding setting it up and the blade, like which side the blade is on the line, because remember the blade has thickness. That blade has 1/8 inch thick. So if it's supposed to be 3 inches, should you just set this 3 inches? Those are some things you got to think about. Next step, so the first step was I cut that, and then the second step was I set the saw blade high, and then I cut like so. This is not safe to push this through like this. I hope that you realize that. That's what I'm just trying to show you how we end up there, and hopefully you see that that's not safe. That's why we use this thing. We'd call this a jig. A jig just helps us make certain types of cuts and so on. The way that this jig works, it goes on the fence like so, and then what we'll do is, so what I did is when I did this cut is I clamped it on. So I'll show you that in a second. So here's some setup things that I need you to do. You need to set your blade to the appropriate height. So if I'm cutting 3 inches in, so then I set my blade height to 3 inches. Of course, make sure you have the table saw off. The power needs to be off anytime you're touching the blade. So then I set the blade height. I got my riving knife in. I get my jig here. This jig, this wood is 3/4 inches thick. So that means that my piece of wood is going to go here like this. This strip of wood is to keep this one like stationary. That's so this doesn't fall backwards. This piece of wood stops that. So this is 3/4 inches thick. This is pushing off of the fence, and then I have this attached to here. So if I'm trying to cut through halfway, like I did here, I don't just set the fence to half of my thickness of the wood, because this wood is pushing this out a little bit. So you're gonna have to do a little bit of math here. 3/4 plus I want to cut halfway through this. That's what I'd set my fence to. I'm not going to give you all the answers. So I kind of, before I start cutting, I'll look and see, okay, well, is that kind of lined up? Is that correct? Another thing we want to do, we just want to show you that this should be square. If there's any gap in here, that means that this lap joint's not going to be straight. If you notice, this jig kind of tilts a little bit. And when it's tilted that way, that's when it's square. So if I'm cutting the piece and I have it like this, notice we got a gap at the bottom of that square. That's not good. So when I'm using this jig, I want it like the pressure kind of that way. So anyway, here's what I need you to do. Get all this set up. Get your board here. Make sure you already have these cuts done. Get your blade set up. Get your jig set up. Put the clamps on like so. Two clamps. And once you're at this point and you have your fence set, it's locked down, basically once you're ready to cut, you need to call me over. I will most likely do the cut for you because it's kind of a dangerous cut. Otherwise, I might just stand by and watch you do it, but you do not cut it unless you have me come over by you and give you permission to do it. But basically all that happens is we do the cut and we're kind of holding this jig like up high and away from the blade. That's basically how it works. So hopefully that's easier than you think.